So it finally happened. Amazon has cancelled the Wheel of Time TV show. And I've got to say, eh, that's how I feel. Like, realistically, I didn't care if the show got greenlit for a season 4 because season 3, if you haven't seen my thoughts on season 3, it's up here. But overall, season 3 is the best season. But in no way, shape, or form do I think season 3 is great, especially because that finale was kind of lackluster. But at the same time too, I don't think season 3 was overtly offensive. I mean, yes, the finale does some weird and bizarre things like killing off Swan and not killing off Moraine and Lanfear, even though like the whole season keeps foreshadowing that they're gonna do that, but they don't do that. And then there are just some things in that season that just aren't accurate to the books, like Elaine and Avienda just being a thing. And I think using that point, we're just gonna stem into the overall reason as to why I don't really care that the show itself is cancelled. And that's because the show itself wasn't a great representation of the books. It wasn't a good adaptation. For the most part, the Wheel of Time show is an adaptation in name only. It doesn't do a ton in terms of taking the books, taking the scenes from the books and bringing them to life. In season 3, they do that a bit more, but for the most part, when you look at like season 1 and season 2, it is pretty much glorified fan fiction. There are so many scenes from the books that they could have adapted, that they should have adapted, that would have been incredibly visual, incredibly cinematic, incredibly cool to see in the visual medium, but they didn't. Like the fact that we don't get Rand's cool moments at the end of The Eye of the World, or Rand's cool moments at the end of The Great Hunt in season 2. Come on, man. Like, what is the point? The show itself is a bad adaptation because, I mean, I think the number one reason is that it mainly just disrespects the source material. And because it disrespects the source material, it also disrespects the main character, Rand al'Thor, who I think is portrayed wonderfully by Yosha Stradowski. It's a shame they don't give him anything to do until the 3rd season, but for the most part, I think visually he's the perfect representation of Rand. And in season 3, when they give him stuff to do, he's really good. Like, especially in season 3, when he starts showcasing Rand's madness. Awesome. He does it fantastically. I look at this guy and I'm like, yeah, that is Rand al'Thor. That is the dragon. And it's a shame because the first 2 seasons pretty much give him nothing to do. He's like a side piece in his own story. I mean, for the most part, the show in itself is like Rosamund Pike's little like pet project. But for the most part, she like showcases herself doing cool stuff on screen or whatever. But at the same time too, the show kind of doesn't because the writing is so baffling. And I think that leads me on to my next point, which is the show is a bad adaptation because the writers are bad writers. They don't showcase the material, even though like the lore and the material for the Wheel of Time is right there. They have the books, but they don't do that. They just like skip over it. And it feels like most of the episodes are written by different people that don't talk to each other. And so when you get to like the finale and it's written by someone else, you kind of go, this whole season just feels so disconnected and so disjointed. And whilst we're talking about the writing, yes, the show showcases more feminist ideologies that are like sometimes present in the books, but not really. They're only really present when you talk to like characters from the Red Arja. But this sort of like heavy feminist messaging has bled into most of the other characters, and in many ways they like diminish the male characters, even though for the most part in the books, the male and female characters in terms of like their power levels are pretty well distributed. They're all like equally powerful. Like the main message Robert Jordan was trying to communicate in the books was the idea of balance, the whole idea of yin and yang. It all comes from that philosophy. But in the show, it's all just like, no, men are arrogant, men are weak, men destroyed everything, men ruined everything. And it's like, that's kind of not what the book's talking about. Not to mention too, they don't clearly define the one power itself and how there's 2 sides, the Saidar and the Saidin, except for like that random line in season 3 where Moraine just starts talking about Saidar and Saidin, and I'm like, but you've never established that in the show. What are you talking about? And look, I've said all this before in the past about the show being a bad representation of the books. And I don't just want to make this video entirely negative, because the show itself did do some things right. The visuals are really good for the most part, minus like some dodgy CGI in season 1 and season 2 and such. I'm just talking about bringing the Wheel of Time world to life. The set design, the costuming, it's really well done. The way they bring Tar Valon to life, amazing. The way they brought the 2 rivers to life, awesome. There are some like cheap things here and there, like the Heramark blade just being a katana and such, but for the most part, in terms of just looking at this world, them realizing this world it's pretty good. Not to mention too, some of the casting choices are really well done. I mean, some of the standouts for me, Kate Fleetwood as Leandrin, Rosamund Pike is very solid as Moraine. I like her as Moraine. I know some book fans do. I know some book fans don't. But for the most part for me, I like Rosamund Pike as Moraine. I don't like the writing of Moraine, but I think for what she does, Rosamund Pike does do a solid job. I've talked about Yosha Stradowski as Rand and how they kind of don't give him anything to do, but when he's given stuff to do, he is really good. Donal Flynn as Matt from Season 2 and Season 3. Amazing. He should have been Matt from the very beginning of the show. He was so good. The perfect representation of that character. I loved him. I thought he was so good. And it is kind of sad that we don't get to see him do more of Matt's stuff in the later books and such. But at the same time too, he's just fantastic casting for that character. Sierra Coveney is also really nice as Elaine. I think she's so lovely and wonderful, and she has some really fun moments in Season 2 and Season 3. Zoe Robbins as Nynaeve, Madeline Madden as Egwene. I mean, they're all good actors. They do what they're told to do. But what they're being told to do is kind of the problem, because obviously the show isn't a good adaptation of the books. And moving forwards with The Wheel of Time, I don't know what they do with the franchise anymore, because the franchise to me is interesting, because when it comes to The Wheel of Time and my personal thoughts on The Wheel of Time, I'm on the last book right now. I've kind of fallen out of love with the book series. I'm kind of just like, yeah, too much, I just can't wait to be done with the last book. But that's not to say that I hate the series. The series is filled with brilliant moments and brilliant writing. And it is sad that we won't get to see certain moments from the books translated onto the small screen at some point. Maybe we'll at some point in the future. And I think that kind of opens up the conversation as to what do they do with the Wheel of Time franchise now? Do they let it sit for however many years until it's kind of forgotten about, and then they relaunch it and they reboot it and we get a new cast and we get a better, more faithful adaptation? Should they even bother attempting to do it in live action again? Should it be an animated show? When will the Wheel of Time franchise return to our screens? I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't mind an animated series. I also wouldn't mind another live action adaptation. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what you do with this franchise, because it's so big, it's so expansive, but at the same time too, I think like the plan that the showrunner Rafe Judkins was talking about, how they had like 8 seasons planned, they were trying to condense things. I don't think the idea in itself of a more condensed version of the story is a bad thing. My problem is just the writing for the show, because the writing for the show doesn't condense down the story. It just does some really weird and baffling things that are so like counterproductive to telling the story. It's just like, what are we doing here? This isn't the Wheel of Time. But at the same time too, they also did do some good things in the show. There are some really good and strong scenes. Like they adapt Beltane, the Winter Night Trolloc attack. They do that fairly well. Certain scenes like the Manetheren song scene are really good, and when they call back to that in Season 2, quite good. I think the first 3 episodes of Season 2 in like their own isolation are not bad. But yeah, for the most part, when it comes to ending the Wheel of Time TV show, okay, cool, it got cancelled. I can move on with my life, I guess, which is kind of weird because this show in many ways is important to my channel in a sense. You know, I've grown my YouTube channel through the Wheel of Time TV show and such. I've grown it through reading the books. And it is going to be a bit weird not being able to cover the show again. But oh well, on to bigger and better things, I guess. I don't know, new things will come in the horizon, new things to cover, and we'll kind of meet them as they come. But those are my thoughts on the Wheel of Time TV show getting cancelled. What did you guys think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social media, all the good stuff. Until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.